All so much for joining. Welcome. This is our Measuring Peace series at the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago. This provides a deep dive into the work that we do through our data and our storytelling. And today's program is about our victim support and how we have been able to increase our impact and our reach over the past year through a strategic amount of collaboration, community engagement, and trauma-informed care. And that's what we focus on here in terms of our critical support for victims of violence at Nonviolence Chicago and how we continue to prevent further harm. So my name is Shonda Collins. I serve as our Vice President of Development and Communications here at the Institute, and I have the privilege today of guiding us through this conversation. So in this panel, we'll dive into the critical role that victim support plays in addressing the aftermath of violence and how strategic partnerships, both internally and externally, can help to make that lasting change. Before we get started and I introduce the panel, I want us to set the stage for what victim support or victim services is. So I'm going to invite our CEO of Nonviolence Chicago, Tenny Gross, to share with us about what victim support entails and how it got started here in Chicago.
Thank you, Shonda. Good afternoon. Thank you for spending lunchtime with us. We don't take it for granted, and we appreciate that you joining us. Um, why victim services? So traditionally, our field of outreach had outreach workers who did outreach. They try and mediate conflict. They build relationship. There were victim advocates. There were mentors. There were court advocates. There were job seekers with their participants. Obviously, it's too much. All right. And obviously, it creates a lot of stress. Kelly, who you'll hear later, they actually did research, serious research with universities on how much trauma staff has. My previous organization, the Nonviolence Institute in Providence, we by accident inherited a victim services group. The ED left the state, left the board with a dilemma, and they asked to merge with our outreach services. So it's not something, it was like a brilliant design or thought of any of us, that suddenly victim services and outreach melded together. And we really realized how much it helps when someone can focus on the grief of a family. The immediate, sadly, the moment, if it's a homicide, for example, the worst moment in a family's life is also a moment where a lot of very practical decisions have to take place. And it's the worst moment to make those decisions. You want to be in your grief, you want to absorb that. So having people who are just thinking about that have the experience and help you navigate, is priceless. It also helps the outreach, the absorbing stress as it is. Sometimes it's participants they know, sometimes it's people they grew up with. So the outreach can focus more on potential retaliation, on neighborhood dynamics. What does this act of violence causes? While victim services can focus on the individual. If it's an individual that survives the shooting, then rehab is a very long term, and the effects and fear, etc. And I let the team, our beautiful team, speak about that. The field that is now exists in Chicago and is spreading around the rest of the country is not the outreach that many of us here in Ceasefire used to do in Chicago, or street workers on the East Coast, or even West Coast outreach worker. It's more evolved. We have mental health practitioners at the institute. We have case manager, we have workforce programs, all built from outreach and victim services. But often the interaction starts with outreach. They prevent a lot of stuff. But if you look at statistics, people who get injured, their chances, they're in a very different club than the rest of us. Their chances of getting shot again or killed is stratospherically higher than someone who wasn't hurt before. So it makes another both common sense as well as a real need to do it. I will close with one statistics. A former NYPD officer was a professor at Brown University, showed that young people who drop out of high school in a neighborhood like Austin or West Garfield have 6 times more chances getting shot and killed than a Marine in Iraq during the surge. So in that framing, to think how necessary it is to really get in there in those difficult moments. We respond 24 hours a day to the scene and then the hospital, and then we follow from there. Why it's so important to dedicate those relationships and those efforts. So I'll hand it back to Shanda again. Thank you for being with us here today at noon.
Thank you so much, Tenny. So, as I said before, it is important to note that the victim support's efforts is rooted in the need to prevent further harm, such as retaliation, depression, and any other effects of that trauma. And we can see all of these and more as a result of one of our victim advocates' stories. So before we get into the panel, we want to show this short video of Ashaki Banks, one of our lead outreach advocates, who experienced firsthand the effects of gun violence when her 7-year-old daughter was killed. So let's take a minute to hear her story.
My name is Ashaki Banks. I'm Victim Services Cohort 3.
Ashaki Banks is an amazing woman, a woman in this work for more than 7 years.
I lost my 7-year-old daughter to gun violence in 2012. And I was out in the streets responding to a lot of shootings in Chicago on the west side where I live. And I came across a few friends that I knew that worked for the Institute of Nonviolence Chicago. They picked me up and gave me a chance.
She has shown her resilience. She's shown her dedication and her commitment to being a victim advocate.
I'm just thankful, I'm real humble, for the work that I do, because there's so many kids out here just suffering, from senseless gun violence.
Ashaki was selected as the reflection speaker for Victim Services Cohort 3 because she demonstrates leadership. I've known Ashaki for the past 7 years, and I've seen her growth in the field of community violence intervention.
I'm making a difference constantly because I chose this. It's real important to me because I'm not going to let my daughter's name just die in vain. So I got to do this work. I made her a promise, so I'm going to fulfill her promise.
Ashaki, I send all blessings to you. You are an incredible force in this work, and I wish you well.
This is my 7-year-old daughter, Heaven Sutton. She was killed in the summer of 2012 by a stray bullet due to the senseless gun violence in Chicago. And I am her voice. 1, 2, 3, boom.
Okay, so I was informed that you all could not see the visual of the video there, so I will make sure that we send that out in the follow-up email. So I apologize about that, but hopefully you could hear her powerful words and testimony through that. And so before we unpack her story just a little bit more, I do want to introduce our panel for today, the experts who are instrumental in the impact that we've seen over the past year and prior to. So first we have Kelly Carroll, who is our Associate Director of Behavioral Health and Wellness. We have Nekenya Hardy, who I might slip up and call Keefe, which we affectionately call him. He is our Associate Director of Outreach and Interventions, and Les Jenkins, our Associate Director of Reentry and then Victim Support Services. So let's jump right into it. And actually, before we do that, I do just want to highlight everyone that you can put questions or feedback in the chat at any point, and we will have time at the end to visit some of those questions. But let's jump into it. So Ashaki's story is much like many of the families that our victim advocates, such as herself, encounter on a regular basis. So I want to start with Les here. Les, can you talk to us about the daily activities of a victim advocate and what they see regularly and what qualifies them for their particular roles?
Yes, yes, thank you, Chandra, and good afternoon, everyone. But yes, some of the things that they see regularly, and some of the things that they experience regularly as in the aftermath of a shooting or responding to the shooting. I want to say that first we deal with shootings in four target areas: Austin, West Garfield, Back of the Yards, and Brighton Park. We also respond to incidents 24 hours around the clock. And we do that in a breakdown of three different categories: 7 to 3, 3 to 11, and 11 to 7, right? With the supporting cast of our outreach team as we collaborate information, share information. And we do that through the CPIC, through other partners that's share the space with us in community violence, through our law enforcement as well. But as we respond to the hospital, some of the things that the victim has experienced on a regular basis is in the aftermath is, high levels of trauma, grief, fear, and different levels of anxiety, right? And it looks different. Each case looks different, whether they're responding to a hospital and being rejected. We're just trying to get there to offer emotional support to families, right? Because some of the hospitals is not in tune or it has not bought into community violence yet. That doesn't prevent us from showing up to support those that's traumatized by the violence that occurred in our target area. And sometimes it could be very challenging when we show up in various hours of the night, and some of the things our victim have had to experience is the rejection part, and we're trying to get there to support families that possibly has been injured by gun violence or either lost someone to gun violence and have to meet them on the actual curve. That could be really brutal sometimes, but that doesn't stop our courageous team of advocates. We still show up relentlessly and engage tirelessly to the point where we're just showing up to offer comfort food, offer some form of resource during that time just to support them. And that may start with just showing up to support them and be an ear, be a shoulder, right? As you just heard from our victim advocate, sometime showing up at the hospital also leads to father relationship. Whereas if they lose a loved one, we walk them through that whole process of supporting them at the morgue's office, and we do that through showing them how that relationship works. With just being there emotionally to show them, whereas when they go in there and have that critical time with their loved ones and have to see them brutally on the screen where they can't have that last moment touch anymore because times has changed. But just being there to comfort them sometimes goes a long way with the family that haven't really accepted that reality yet, right? And that's what we do with on a regular basis. That's traumatic within itself. And then making sure that our teams that's responding to incidents doing around the clock, 24 hours around the clock, is being taken care themselves as we continue to try to help heal others. We have a great team of clinicians here through our behavioral health team that also make sure that we're okay, right? And that's really, really powerful. And I'll turn it over back to you at this time, Shonda.
Sure. Thank you, Les. I think you did a great job highlighting, how we address trauma. It's central to our work, both for the community and those that we serve, as well as for our staff. So, Kelly, do you have anything else to add or expound upon as it relates to the effects of the trauma? Maybe explain a little bit of what we're seeing on the screen with the survey that we did with staff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the data that we're looking at right now was collected in an all-staff survey in 2022. And we wanted to get a better understanding of what trauma exposure looked like for our teams so that we knew, more about what kind of support that they needed around wellness. And I think what I really want to emphasize is you see sort of two colors on your screen. You see some data in blue and some data in green. Everything in blue happened off the job, and everything in green happened on the job. So this is just our victim services team. And I emphasize that to make the point that our team comes in with lived experience, which makes them really, really great at what they do and incredibly able to connect effectively with the folks in the community that are affected by gun violence. But it also means that they're coming in with their own trauma, even before they're exposed to secondary trauma on the job. And so this just highlights, I think, that the double-edged sword of what makes them really effective at what they do, but also at the same time, the need for us as an organization to take care of them, which was really the impetus for our staff wellness initiative that we've been in this journey for about the past 3 years, identifying what our staff needs around addressing and mitigating the impact of trauma, both on and off the job, to help them to heal, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because they're so good at what they do. We want to be able to sustain them in their work.
That's great. And as far as our approach to addressing the trauma that staff is exposed to, do you want to talk a little bit about that in terms of some of the training and other supports that we offer?
Yeah. So I really want to shout out Les on this. Les has been an incredible ally and advocate of our behavioral health team around just bringing education to the victim services team. So we've trained the victim services team in trauma-informed care, in understanding grief and coping with grief and supporting folks that are grieving. All of our teams go through our cognitive behavioral intervention training, which is something that we also facilitate with participants, which is really just skills for coping with trauma and stress. So our team at different points has literally embedded ourselves in the victim services team meetings and really just try to ensure that they have all of the knowledge and expertise that we have as clinicians so that they can bring that on the front lines when they're interacting with participants. The other thing I'll say is that we also provide a lot of peer support to our staff. So our behavioral health team, clinicians and non-clinicians, make ourselves available to staff to be able to support them with whatever they may be struggling with, job related, personal related. And we have a robust staff wellness initiative just with a lot of different aspects, but it's all aimed at how do we sustain and take care of the folks that are doing this work on the front lines so that they can be more effective.
And if I can jump in there with you, Kelly, Shonda. So
Please do.
So one of the things, because I like this part, because Kelly just said something that resonated so much is the collaboration and what I've seen to be very effective with the team is to allow them to really have a buy-in to share what their education looked like with our behavior team because they see from firsthand experience trauma looks different every time they respond out, right? And just being informed on what those signs look like and being able to help them be developed and to be able to express and show how they should show empathy and compassion toward a moment that's considered a crisis to another individual, right? And not feeling like they have to have all the answer, but sometimes just showing up and being able to be present with them, right? And help them get from one side of that hurdle to the other side is so important, right? In our line of work, right? And that's showing up and be intentional and consistent without judgment, right? And no matter how that looks, right? We're not there to judge. We're just there to help them try to get into a quick, swift pathway of restore and repair and to give them back something that was took from them, right? So just want to highlight that, and I couldn't do that without the collaboration of behavioral health, right?
And I'll add one last thing and then hand it back to you, Shonda. And that's that I think a lot of times folks wonder why we don't necessarily send our behavioral health clinicians out on the front lines to do the response to the shootings. And quite frankly, I think the reason is because the team that's out there doing the response has all the tools that they need. Now, if there are folks that maybe have more ongoing difficulties in coping with losses or trauma, we may come in at a later time and be able to provide more long-term ongoing support and therapy. But I really want to emphasize that the folks that are on the front lines doing this have the tools that they need and oftentimes don't need a clinician because they have the skill set already.
Thank you. Those were both important notes, and it's clear that the collaboration between the two departments is extremely powerful. To shift to what has also been impactful, and clearly is happening internally, between two other departments. Les, I want to stay with you and bring Nekenya into the conversation. There's also an impact happening with the collaboration between the street outreach team and the victim services team as well. So, Les, can you speak about the relationship between outreach, victim services, maybe explain, that strategic collaboration and how it improves outcomes for our victims? And then I'll follow up with a question to Nekenya after that.
Yes, so yes, I mean, when you look at the percentage rate of as you're looking at 49%, as you look at as you're visualizing as I'm speaking, victim service acceptance rate, um, a lot of that, I would like to highlight the strong collaboration between outreach and victim service. Outreach is really the first line of defense as we relates to having inroad with various communities. And as you heard earlier about various victim advocates having some education and have lived experience, but a lot of our victim advocates also reside in the communities that they come from, right? And so a lot of our outreach workers reside in the community. So having that strong communication skill with each other, right, and informing each other when something take place we've seen it to be very effective, and it helps us get faster results with getting to the family if we're struggling to get to a family or make a connection with the family. The outreach workers has been so helpful for us with us communicating with them, like so that we can get to that family because they have access, they may have a different level of access to those families or those that's been victimized by violence, right? And when we're having a challenge at the hospital and we know that that family member or that victim or that extended family member has to return back to that same community, one of our first point of persons that we contact is Nekenya and his team because they already know who those family members are or they have a clear idea of where we can get started at. And a lot of times we take a deeper dive to look at what that incident was like, what the security issues around that is like, and we partner up with them and we come boots on the ground and we collaborate to making those connections.
Mhm.
And I think about a case just recently, Shonda, not too long ago. In this case, it deals with the Davis family, where there was something so aggressive, something that from a party in the Austin area that spirals so badly to the point that someone lost their life, a little sister lost her life. But had we not been able to have a relationship with our outreach team that has boots on the ground in that area, we was able to get there and actually get connected to the family in so many ways through outreach because some of our outreach workers from all different areas had a relationship with the family, and so we were able to offer the support that that family needed as they constantly, right now to this day, is still going through that grieving process.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super helpful. Keefe, can you continue just painting this picture for us based on what Les is saying around some of those helpful insights or what the relationship with the community looks like, to where we're able to, you all, outreach is able to assist victim services, in supporting victims after an incident?
I would first and foremost, I would piggyback off what Les was just saying, the same incident um, with the young lady, and I will use that incident as an example. With the outreach team doing relentless engagement in the communities to build with the target population as well as the community, as well as the groups that's in the community. Right now, we have 52 groups that's in Austin that the outreach team is continuously building with, continuously working with, and continuously trying to change their mindset. This incident in particular that Les was just speaking, off that incident, we wasn't just able to connect to the victim of the of violence. We was also able to reach her family, which was a group that was in the Austin community. We was also able to talk them down to not doing any retaliation, to do nothing and try to escalate the incident. Not just that we stopped them from trying to do any retaliation, we also worked with the groups, right? And built with the young men and started relationships with the young man. So we was able to help change some of their mindset, as Les was saying earlier. Right now, this day, we still have participants who working to change their life from that incident that was a victim, right? We use that to not just help the victim, but we help the victim family. We help the groups that's a part of the victim. We stop the retaliations from anybody trying to else getting hurt behind this incident. And then we also push to work with the groups to help change their mindset and put them in better opportunities in life. So after us by the collaboration with victim services, behavior health, and the rest of the departments at IMVC, we not just kept the help the victim, but we was able to stop any type of retaliation. We was able to build relationship with the community. We was able to build relationship with the groups that's in the community. And we was also able to help a few young men change their mindset and look and see different life in a different way and put themselves in a better opportunity through the collaboration that we all made here at IMVC with Victim Services.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is
again,
key. Yeah.
and again,
Go ahead, Les. Go
And
ahead.
again, Shauna, just to add on to what Keith was saying, as we continue to filter this thing out, because we understand that it just doesn't, for us, it don't end there. And I must keep saying it, it just doesn't end there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we understand gun violence just doesn't affect, as Nekenya was saying, that individual. But through program and relentless engagement, we also have our survivor group, grief group, and that's a separate entity outside of our clinicians of our great behavior health team. But it would be remiss of me not to say like how we're able to still like right now in far as the family aspect, and that falls under the secondary victims, right? Because they lost someone during that incident. So when the Kenya was talking about programming and getting in touch with those groups, we still collaborated with our behavior health team and was able to offer the family the process of behavior health to carry the father and the mother through what they need to go through. So and be supported there as well. So it's a wraparound part of the process. And
Service.
again, we couldn't do it without outreach being very informed and connecting us, and then us connecting with our amazing team of clinicians. And then we offer also the survivor group and grief group. And that's a space where they can come and they can share how that frustration look. And everyone, and for those that's not informed, no one know the stages of grief and how they show up. Like, and we're just not there to put a temperature check on them. It's just to support them as they go through,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely. Both of what you were saying is key in understanding what we see here on the slide as it relates to the retaliatory process and how we're able to mitigate that. And that's why it's so important, going back a slide, to understand that relentless engagement and how important that is in terms of accepting services. When we see this, the acceptance of services, that speaks to our credibility, that speaks to that relentless engagement, that speaks to folks making those conscious decisions to make changes. And so I think you're both speaking very well to the fact that that's key in understanding the impact here and why this particular stat is something that we are really celebrating right now, because it shows not only, how we've been able to be consistent, but how our community is responding to that and making those decisions to make changes for their lives as well as for the lives of their families. So just a little bit more about the resources. Les, you started speaking about the grief groups, right? So when we say people are accepting services or they're accepting resources, what are some of those resources? And any of you all can speak to that as it relates to what your respective departments offer. But I do want to say that in 2024, we did.
You're mute.
Sorry about that. I do want to say that in 2024, we did see 410 people who were shot in our service areas as a whole, and nearly half of those people did accept the services, as you could see. So again, can we break down the data in the neighborhoods, and then what that looks like in terms of like what types of services are they accepting?
Yes. So yes, when you're looking at as you and just to piggyback on what you're saying, like when you're looking at 199%, and out of that, that really says we actually target a whole 100% of the population that we serve, but over within this area, 49% of those we was able to make connection with and serve and get them to accept services. And services look different per each individual victim. Some would maybe getting them aligned with different resources through partnerships that we have with those that is involved with community violence. And what's coming to mind right now is our connection through the city of Chicago. And one of the resources that we often use is what's called our ESVF program, which is the Emergency Supplement Victim Fund. That's a more rapid and speedy process than another resource that we use, but all resources are very good. Just it depends on the timing and the situation of the loved ones or the victim that's impacted by the violence. Whereas we use another resource through our AG's office, which is our CVC, Crime Victim Compensation Form, whereas it's another part of the process that deal with reimbursement. Both of these categories, and I'll go back to the ESVF, one deals with basic needs. That's just helping them get some leverage, financial, monetarily. And also, it's another aspect to the ESVF that support them monetarily with the compensation of 1,500 toward funeral or burial expenses. Um, and also the $1,000 part of the process deals with basic needs such as medical expenses or loss of wages during time of being off. Through our AG's office, that form of support deals with basically a crime cleanup. For those that doesn't know, crime cleanup, wages of loss, being off, being away from your job, or medical, or I'm having a brain fart here, but it covers a wide range, the AG's office, but it's a little more lengthier. Sometimes it may take anywhere from 1 to 3 years, or it may have its various challenges. The reason how we came up with the ESVF is because through our CP4P, Community Power for Peace, we also meet in a collaborative forum on Mondays and Thursdays. Over 15 to 27 different agencies meet to talk about different incident that took place. The mayor's office is a part of that part of the process. And so they wanted to be supportive with us. We're helping meet families as they experience crises and have to take away from their financial bank. So that's been very, very helpful. And it has its challenges, but it's been very helpful. As we continue to help them as they go through funeral arrangements and things of that, we also have our own support around different funeral homes that help support the need of community violence interventions. And yes, those are some of the things that we could work with as far as resource outside of getting them set up for programming with education, housing, or relocation. And we're having struggles around there because it's not as easy as it says, because sometimes violence has a tendency of following you. But again, the picture that you're looking at, as it looks like us all connecting and smiling there, is just one win is better than no win. So we meet regular, and we take a deep dive to strategize on how can we actually think outside the box to continue to support families and individuals that's infected by community violence. Turn it back over to you, Chandra.
Great, great. So Nekenya, Kelly, anything to add in terms of resources? And just to reiterate, folks, we can put questions in the chat. We are coming to that time pretty quickly, so feel free to put your questions in the chat at this time.
I'll speak on the resources that the outreach team is bringing. For one, we going in the community and we working with the highest of the highest risk. We targeting our participants, which could be people who could be the next perpetrator or victim to gun violence, right? and all four communities, Austin, Garfield, Back of the Yard, as well as Brighton Park. We helping out with workforce development programs. We're helping out with our reentry department as well as our behavioral health department. We also helping out by helping our participants get into trade degrees such as commercial driver's license, plumbing, electrician, and things like that. But also, I want to put out there the resources that IMVC is putting out there and helping us staff, right? Because they're not just investing into the community, right? They also investing into their staff members, which is I am one of them, as Les is one of them as well. As CVI, I'm sorry about that. It's College Unbound. We're in college to get our BA in organizational leadership and change, thanks to the organization who invested in us to educate ourselves and take our education a little farther. I was soon to be graduating next week, as well as my colleague Les next week. So these are the type of things that IMVC is bringing to our community, right? We really helping young men and women. Change their life, right? We're really changing the violence with opportunity. And I am a lived experience to see it all aspire right in my face. I'm looking at it happen, right? And it's all because of IMVC coming to the communities to help us change the community and put everyone in a better place.
I can chime in as well. In terms of some of the behavioral health resources that we offer, I want to start with, we have a strong partnership with an organization called Sarah's In that provides domestic violence support. We do find that a good chunk of the shootings that we respond to have some sort of interpersonal violence component to them. And so it's not uncommon for the folks that we're serving, the participants that we connect with, those relationships we form, to have need of additional support specializing from folks that specialize in domestic violence or interpersonal violence. In terms of what our behavioral health team provides, as I mentioned, we offer therapy to anyone who has been impacted by gun violence, whether it's a family member, a victim themselves, or someone who maybe has been on the shooter side and really wants to change their life. And as Keefe and Les have pointed out, there's quite a bit of overlap between those that are victims as well as shooters. And so some of the stats we have up here, we received 74 referrals, and our referrals come from the other departments. So that means that outreach or victim services or our reentry team or case management, they've connected with someone and that person has asked specifically for therapy or behavioral health services. About just over a quarter of all of our referrals that we get internally are from victim services, and that's the largest percentage of all of the departments that refer. So a good chunk of our referrals come from our victim services department. Like I said, there's no time limit to the therapy that we offer. All of our clinicians are trained in trauma-informed care. They can offer our cognitive behavioral intervention training. We're in the process of training them in quite a number of evidence-based trauma-focused treatments. And we really focus on making sure that the services that we're providing to participants will meet their needs while reducing barriers. I'll add one last thing and then hand it back to you, Shunda. A lot of times what we've found is that the folks in the communities that we serve, our staff included, maybe haven't had great experiences with the mental health system in the past. And so there's still a lot of stigma that we're facing and dealing with around behavioral health services or medical services. And we pride ourselves on being a safe entry point for anyone who is seeking behavioral health services. So that may mean that sometimes we're getting referrals from folks that we're not the best folks to provide the services, but we will still take the intake because we don't ever want someone to get the message that they can't access services. So if we get a referral from someone and our team isn't the best fit to provide it, we still work with that participant or that person or family to connect them with an external resource. And we have a number of partners in the community that provide behavioral health. MPI is one of them. The Encompassing Center is one in West Garfield. There's a number that we work with, but I just really want to emphasize that we never want to turn someone away if they say, I want to talk to a clinician. And even if we're not going to be the one that works with them long term, which for a lot of them we are, even if we're not, we're still going to do that intake and make sure that they get connected to some sort of a service that can provide them with that ongoing care, because we really are doing our best to reduce barriers to accessing mental health care.
That's, I think a good segue too into just like talking more about our collaboration externally. I have some of our partners listed here. And so, does anyone want to speak to, I know well, you all started mentioning some of these already, but just in general, talking about, the power of our community working together and the importance of these partnerships. Any final words on this before we jump into the audience Q&A?
Yes, what I would say is like when you look at, and I spoke briefly earlier when I was talking about the Chicago Department of Public Health, the Community Safety Coordination System. That's what I was talking about with the mayor's office and in a strong collaboration with us, just taking a deeper dive as it relates to someone being impacted by community violence, right? And we do that, and we do that relentlessly, and we engage. Even we created spaces where we meet twice a week, and sometimes it doesn't happen just twice a week. It happens based on the situation itself. We have outside relationships where, based on a critical incident or the crisis within itself, we will communicate throughout the day. But yes, these incidents all touch these partners, and I'm ever so grateful. Even with our trauma-informed care center, I mean, it's so important to be connected and be linked up, because what IMBC probably can't provide, having that collaborative, strong relationship so that we can actually help support those that's overlooked and underserved on the population of people that we serve, they can help support them as they make the process to healing, right? Yes, and just informing everyone and continues to link up and try to continue engaging with Mount Sinai, Cook County, the Nurses Association, Grace and Peace, as Kelly was alluding earlier, right? There's so many underlying issues that after you get that buy-in and that relationship started, you find out it's so much. So each one of these actual organizations that's on here, I'm so grateful for them, because we couldn't do it without them. And we continue to find ways to continue to help support people that's affected by community violence. So if you have any other ideas or inputs you want to share with IMVC, right? Because there's not a one-way approach toward approaching this. We are open for communication and dialogue.
Thank you, Les. So the good news is over the course of time here, we have seen a reduction in gun violence through us being strategic about our internal and external collaboration. There's still much work to do, and Tenny will close us out shortly in talking a little bit about where we are now, what we're looking at towards the future. But to give our panel last word before we go into the Q&A, is there anything else you all want to say in terms of the collaboration between your departments or the partnerships that has made us safer as a city? And you all have said a lot, so no pressure, but just wanted to allow that space if we needed it. So what we'll do next is turn it over to you, the audience, and see what questions you have. I have one already that has come through, and excuse me, from Marcia. What jobs do they pursue, they meaning our outreach team after IMVC, and how long do they stay in outreach? So it seems to speak to the tenure of our outreach team, which I can say, someone who is relatively newer to the organization, about a year and a half in, it was really great for me to see and really powerful for me to see the dedication of our team in terms of the tenure. You don't see in nonprofits there being a long-term tenure in terms of being able to uh, create that relentless engagement that Nekenya talked about, right? That 3-year time frame working with the community or different families. And so, our turnover rate last year was 3%, which is unheard of again in the nonprofit space and the social service space. So we do have some dedicated folks. However, to the point of this question, I think we do try to set up our staff for future professional growth and advancement. I think Keefe spoke to the opportunity for College Unbound. So I'm gonna turn it over to you all to give a little bit more feedback on that. And Tenny, if you have more to say on that as well, please feel free to jump in.
I would say that is IMVC bring a lot of opportunity towards the outreach teams. They put so much into us where we be trained and experienced and educate us and help us develop. They put so much into our development for us to grow, right? That the impact that they having in us. I myself started as an outreach worker. I've been promoted almost 5 times since I started working here at IMVC. I am now Associate Director at IMVC. So I'm still with IMVC, but it is potentials to growth, right? To grow. I have saw some of my participants who was once a part of our FLIP program as a participant, who is also now becoming participants. I mean, outreach workers and case managements and working in the CVI field. So it's opportunity to grow. It's opportunity to change your life. It's opportunity to help others change their life. It's definitely opportunities, as Shonda said, right? I'll be walking across stage with my BA in organizational leadership and change in another 10 days, which is I'm so excited for. But it's all thanks to IMVC, right? Believing in me more than I believed in myself, right? It wouldn't have been possible if they wouldn't have made this happen for me. Yeah, I got it done, but without them making it happen for me to get it done, without giving me the opportunity to educate myself, to put myself in a better opportunity in life, it wouldn't have happened. So they post so much into us and as well as our community that it is chances and opportunities. And I've been doing violence prevention for a long time in Chicago. So I got a well-known name in the CVI field in Chicago. So I know that coming from IMVC to be an associate director, I have no problems that other organizations would love to have me to run their program, to manage their program, to do things like that, right? I get offers all the time to come and work. But I'm just putting that out there because this what it do, right? Again, I got over 15 participants that came in, that was participants that came in through our FLIP program, who is now full-time CVI workers, either at IMVC or some CVI field in Chicago. So it definitely opened up doors for you being an outreach worker and having LTO to reach the target population and then and develop into yourself where you educate yourself and you're really able to articulate the word out would definitely open up doors for you. I'm a lived experience of it and it's happening right here in my face right now.
Thank you, Keefe, and congratulations to you and Les. I cannot wait to see you all walk across the stage next week.
Me too.
So so Kelly, can you speak to some of the barriers in seeking out or access to mental health treatment or services for the folks in our communities, and maybe even speak a little bit about the journey we've taken in terms of addressing the stigma around some of those services?
Yeah, absolutely. I think um, as some folks may or may not be aware, there simply aren't a ton of behavioral health or mental health resources in the communities that we serve. If they do exist, then they often have really long wait lists or they're short-lived services. They're quite time limited. And quite frankly, this is a problem in for folks even in more resourced communities. Like this is just a problem in our country. And I know that there's some great legislation that is being pushed forth in the state legislature to address access to behavioral health care. But for the communities that we serve, not only is it a lack of resources, but that's the stigma and I think the historical distrust of systems and institutions that's incredibly understandable and makes a lot of sense based on the experiences folks have had. All of these things make it hard for those who maybe want help to ask for help or to know where to turn when they want help. And so, like I said, we try really hard to be a safe space for folks to get connected with services, whether it's through us or through another partner organization. And remind me what that sort of second part of your question was, Shunda.
So access, and then also how the journey of how we've kind of addressed the stigma.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I don't know how intentional it was, but one of the things that we found with our staff wellness initiative over the course of the past 3 years in trying to educate our staff about trauma and trying to provide for our team's wellness needs and just provide support to address previous or present trauma. What we found is that as our initially, as we started to accept and open our behavioral health team up to take participant referrals, they were very slow to come. And I think part of that was that the staff themselves, because they're from the community, they had their own skepticism as relationships were built, as folks received more training, as knowledge was shared, and as trust was built internally through our team, as we learned to collaborate in the way that Les and Keefe and I have shared today, that has been a very intentional labor over the course of the past 3 years. And I think it's because of that very intentional relationship building and collaboration that we've now found that our team, not only do some of them become more open to pursuing or engaging in behavioral health services themselves to address their own trauma, but now they've experienced something beneficial around mental health and their wellness, that they want their participants to experience that too, and they're more likely to encourage their participants to reach out for help. So folks that 3 years ago were like, why am I in this CVI group? I don't know why I'm here and I don't believe in any of this. They're now these ambassadors for behavioral health in a way that I never could have imagined. And they're the ones going to their participants and say, you really need to talk to Kelly. You really need to talk to Jordan. You really need to talk to our clinicians, because I got to tell you, I was skeptical once too, but then I gave it a chance and I found that it was really, really beneficial. So there's been a lot of intentional work and the collaboration. It's been hard fought, but the payoff has been wide.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Les. Thank you, Nekenya, for not only sharing with us today, but also your work that you do every single day. and leading our teams and contributing directly as well. So there are two more questions. We have about 4 more minutes, and I want to invite Tenny to come back for closing remarks. And I believe he can address these two questions in his remarks. So very briefly summarizing, in terms of the importance of the work that we do and gaining recognition in the larger system and how we interact with that. Like what kinds of support would you like from the larger Chicago community? And maybe Tenny speak to the larger network that we exist in already. And then lastly, what is the vision or what vision do we have for future evolution of this work? Tenny, please take it away.
Thank you very much. I'll try and rush through a few points. Quickly, if you like what you heard today and you probably were interested even before, invite us to homes, invite us to houses of worship. Often I hear people who are not immediately, even in neighborhood immediately impacted, people think there is no plan, panic, right? The disinformation, Citizens app scares us. He told me yesterday 3 times that someone around my house registered as a sex offender. It's probably nonsense, right? But they keep scaring us from each other. And the news, sadly, for clickbaiting has become that too. So chances to talk about the plan that exists in Chicago. The vision is one in this particular seminar we didn't talk about is there's now a new project that the business community, the civic committee, has raised $100 million for in 7 neighborhoods. It's to go to scale, the right dosage, like in medicine, to actually, we're doing heroic efforts, but we were reaching about 19% of Austin that are high risk residents, those in the networks that potentially get shot or shoot someone. So the goal is within 5 years to reach 75%, which we think will tip the violence very drastically, 80% reduction. So it's quite amazing that we have a business community in Chicago like nowhere else in the country. There's things to be proud about in Chicago. This infrastructure, this civilian architecture, we like to call it, with communities partnering for peace, which we were a leading partner to build with MFS, UCAN, New Life, etc. It's like 15 organizations now that cover 28 neighborhoods where about 80% of the homicides takes place. That network that has an academy, we're now on cohort number 20. We trained 500 outreach workers. We're training victim advocates, middle management. These are new things in our field that opened opportunities now for growth. Between staff, which you heard about, and those who are participants on stipend that are keeping their corners safe, there's close to 2,000 people. Many of them have backgrounds. They were touched by the legal system, which really not only makes you unemployed, but very often at least underemployed. So building that network for people who were excluded from the economy is smart for all of us. It relates to victim services, right? We got to get proximate. We got to get close, right? So we spend about $2 billion on policing, not to mention more incarceration, not to mention fixing people in hospitals if we try. Really, we should never forget, we should have what I'm asking people who are listening, have passion and be adamant, push that these things, we are part of public safety. No one is mentioning at the moment cutting law enforcement as much as there's deficits in the city and the state. They should not be thinking of cutting what we have. I would say at the moment we are very lucky with the governor and some elected officials, especially the state and Cook County, a little bit in the city as well, but they lag in supporting this. The governor is a big believer in community violence intervention, right? And no one is talking about defunding law enforcement. This is a civilian architecture that partners, but in a respectful way, that we are not violated, our privacy is not violated. It's the way to go and the way to build. While this thing was going on, we had a shooting at 11:56. Teams were starting to text. They showed up at the scene. Some went to the hospital, and I just saw a message that the person was pronounced dead, unfortunately. So while we're talking, it's noon. the team already had to respond to a shooting and had to go to both the scene and they already connected with the family. That's how quick they are. They know the family. So that's the reality of the tragedy. Often we work to reduce, so there will be less and less of them. Sometimes our staff say this is normal, and we want to make it completely not normal. As much as many people and our colleagues have grown up in those situations, we want it to be not normal. I think I'll stop with there. Keep up thinking of places where we can give those talks and educate, not for ourselves, not for the Institute, but there really is, civilians have a role to play. There is a plan in this city that is the envy of the rest of the country. Let's keep building it. Thank you.